Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I am wearing a tinfoil hat today.
Dude, I almost said, hey, church planner. I got too many podcasts going on, man.
That's all right. That is all right.
I can't keep them straight. Geez. We've actually been having great conversations offline. And now, I mean, apparently another mass shooting in Colorado, 7 dead, birthday party.
Yeah. And we've also got to talk about ATF reclassifications. Black Ops was asking us about that. I think those two things are both worth talking about. And then I think we should bring up the light of, let's not let the light die out about remembering that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, because it is related to recent current events. And so we got to talk about that.
We do. In fact, it was so funny because when I'm reading the article about it, here's the last part of the line. The philanthropist, whatever, and sex offender who killed himself in jail in 2019. I meant to put who allegedly killed himself in jail. That's they need to correct the article.
Wait, do they have philanthropist in the listing?
Yes. Jeffrey Epstein, the philanthropist and sex offender who killed himself in jail.
How do you put those two things together? Philanthropist and sex offender.
And pedophile sex offender.
Why would you mention that? Like once the latter is mentioned, is part of the headline, why would you mention that he was are they trying to get people to make us feel better about them? Like, I don't understand. That's insane.
And he didn't kill himself. Why do they keep saying he killed himself? He was murdered. If he's really dead.
I'm seriously not sure he's dead. And I'm not even kidding.
I'm pretty sure he's dead. Because the problem with these guys is they can't stay under the radar. Like, their egos won't allow them to.
This is a good point. Wow, that's an interesting one. Oh.
It's kind of like the whole, is Elvis really dead? Yeah, there's no way his ego would allow him to stay under the radar. It's just not possible.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Man, what nuts times, man. This is...
Dude, I got to tell you. Okay, so in the Telegram group, which, by the way, if you're not a part of it, you need to join. You join by texting the keyword hero to 850-990-2020. All the best memes go on there. That's all I'm saying. Just the best memes go on there. So I threw in the Telegram group my Glock 26. So I put a red dot on it. I got the Hollow Sun 507C. I wanted that one mainly because I had $250 in gift cards and it was $300. So I was like, that's the reason I'm getting that one instead of an RMR, which was what I have on a bunch of my firearms. And so anyway, here's the thing. The Hollow Sun 507C, you got 3 options. You got red dot, you got circle, and then you got circle dot. Mm-hmm. So the circle dot, I think the circle is like 32 MOA, and then the dot, I want to say, is 1 or 2 MOA, something like that. So the circle dot really helps you, as you're coming up on target and you start to see where you're aiming for, break that circle, and then you're getting there quicker. So it helps you get on target, or helps you at least to fire a little bit sooner, because you can see you're starting to break the target where you're trying to hit. So anyway, I got that, and got it at a place down here called Rifle Gear. You have to have an appointment to go in, which I hated, but I had gift cards. So it was like, what are you going to do? So I go in there, by the way, completely empty. Like, there's not a gun on the shelf, nothing on the walls, just a few accessories, right? That's about it. So I get the red dot. They have me take a look at it. I'm looking at it. Looks good. Get it home. I bought the Brownell slide just because I was too lazy. I don't want to wait to have my slide cut. So I was like, I'm just going to buy the Brownell slide. So I'm putting everything together. I drop it. Not a big deal, right? Because these things are made to be dropped. Like these are made for basically combat situations.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be all over. So I literally didn't worry about it at all. I kid you not, man. I am looking at the red dot and the circle dot is like a huge blur, like a 32 MOA blur. And even when I go to the dot, it's just like huge. And the circle, it's like the red is everywhere. And I'm like, dude, how could I possibly have broken this thing?
Yeah.
By dropping it? Like, it's not even possible. So I'm like trying to figure this thing out. It's like 10, 15 minutes later. And then all of a sudden I realize I'm a freaking idiot. I got my readers on because I couldn't fricking see the screws. And so I'm looking down the red dot with readers on. And of course it's blurring all over the place. I'm like,
oh man,
you're such an idiot. Take those off and everything's fine. So yeah.
That's a relief though. I'd rather have that like feeling silly moment than to actually have to be fixing the doggone thing. So
yeah, that idiot moment of, well, don't look through the red dot with your readers on.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's good that's working out. So have you been able to shoot the thing yet?
No, I wanted to go last Friday. I just didn't have a chance to. So hopefully, maybe this weekend I'll be able to go take it because I want to use it as my carry because it'll be it's got such a lower profile than my Glock 19. Glock 19 is what I typically carry, but I mean the grip on that sucker, I mean it sticks out. I mean, there's just no way around it. It sticks out.
Yeah.
So I like the Glock 26 because it fits in the hand the same way. Pretty much. I mean, double stack. It doesn't feel much different. So that's really why I wanted it. I mean, I got the Glock 48 thinking, I'd use that as a carry. Problem is I'm just not as good with it. I mean, it's iron sights. You need a completely different style red dot for it. And so I don't know. I think that's going to become a safe queen of a gun, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's all right. It's a nice little gun. It's a good one to have as a backup. It's going to take a lot of mags. It's going to look cool. Easy to put on target. Your wife could shoot that. It's no problem.
Could if she would actually go shooting.
Oh man. The
only time she wanted to go shooting was at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's when the ranges were closed here.
Oh, man.
So
can't win for losing, man.
I know.
Yeah. My wife's gone the other way, man. She's all trying to talk me into buying more guns. And I'm like, I guess I could do that. So it's good times. Good times.
I'll do my part. I'll buy another gun for the family.
That's right. Now, the problem is my friends who are just getting into guns that don't realize how much ammo costs. That's they want to come and shoot. And I'm like, you don't realize it's going to cost me too much money for you to shoot. So learn somewhere else.
Right. Yep.
So, man, we got a couple of things we could talk about here. I think while we're talking about gun projects, I need to make a quick plug for Nudo. So last week I was grieving because I had milled through the side of that 80%er. I think that, I gave it to Leroy Sr., let's say. And Leroy Sr. had a solution. He says, well, have you ever tried Nudo? And I don't know if you guys have ever looked up Nudo. It's spelled NU-DOH. It is an epoxy compound that is really made for replacing metal. It's you weave it, mush it together just like you would any other epoxy, although it's more of like a clayish style epoxy, and it hardens. And let's just say it's being tested right now. We'll have a conversation with Leroy Sr. And if it works out, that might be a solution to keep in mind. It's essentially an eraser for when you mess up milling out an 80% lower. So we'll see how it does, but so far it looks promising. So
nice.
We're giving it some time to cure before it and we're going to use an actual jig the next time. So thought that was kind of cool, but check out Nudo, worth and it's for construction. It has nothing to do with guns at all, but we just might have stumbled across a really great idea. So we got a couple of other things. I think we should talk about this Bill Gates Epstein thing in a minute, but I feel like we should cover a couple of bases first.
Probably.
an easy one. Cameron is throwing up to us. I'm sorry. Black Ops is throwing up to us. Sorry, I keep forgetting your call sign, man. He's looking for a good 22 LR. Black Ops, are you talking about a pistol or a rifle in 22 LR? Let us know, because I think if we're talking pistol, I am going to right now recommend. Hope this is not inappropriate, but I'm going to recommend the Ruger Mark III Mark IV. For a target pistol, this thing is stinking awesome. It functions like a rifle. Highly recommend it. Super accurate. I've never had that jam. And so you think about it, even with anything related, he's saying both, anything related to target shooting, the only downside of those Ruger targeting pistols, usually I think they list them as a 22-45, and then you've got everything Mark III, 4, and I think 5 now. I think mine is a Mark III. It's just awesome for target shooting. It functions well. Everything's good. The only downside is it is not composite. And so if you plan to use it for bugging out or anything like that, it will rust quickly. I actually did a kind of a survival gear test overnight, just kind of see how our gear would do. And I was thinking that would be I can do even some mid-range shooting with that thing. But one night in a really, really damp environment, and it was already showing rust spots. So that's probably not going to be my main bug out gun. But
I would also say too, unfortunately, I don't think it's on our roster here in California. So, I don't think he could actually get that one here.
Dang it. He can't get the Glock either.
Not a Glock 22, but I think about the only Walther he can get is a 22. I think that's the only thing that's on our roster.
So
for a Walther.
Here's the thing I will say. Interestingly enough, I also have a Walther, the P22, and I love it. I do generally recommend it, but you've got to watch out when the Walther was made. If it was made during that time with Smith & Wesson, when they owned Walther, they were going through a lot of like quality assurance issues, and there was kind of arm wrestling on how they were going to be making them. There's just some things that just aren't perfect about those Walther P22s. And I say that with great grief because I love this gun, but I've had a couple of issues with it. I've had to have it worked on once or twice. And honestly, today, before the podcast, I was actually like working with a swage tool to try to make sure that I don't have burrs or anything in there because it's not wanting to eject properly. So really love that gun, but you got to watch out. It doesn't always do what you need it to do. Yeah. So man, hopefully he could get that one and just get not a sucky one.
You know what I got is Agency Arms, I believe is the name of it. They created an upper for your Glock 17 that runs on a 22. So you got to find the right ammo that'll feed properly, so that way you don't have any jam issues when it's feeding. I believe anything that's got a hollow point tends to have issues feeding. Yeah. I've noticed. But I do like that. I mean, the fact that it fits on a Glock 17, which of course means you could buy yourself a P80 Glock 17 and then buy the 22 upper, and then boom, there you go.
That's pretty good. That's not a bad way to do it, Pete. Not a bad way at all.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have those cycling issues and all that kind of stuff like I'm having right now. That's not a bad way to go. And I would say anytime you're dealing with 22, there's just something funny about the feeds in so many different guns. And so you just know hollow points are tricky in so many of them. I think you already mentioned that. And I think you were saying on that Glock, it becomes an issue. I've got my Ruger does fine. But man, my Ruger 1022, actually the rifle, which by the way, I do recommend the Ruger 1022. You can get parts for it easy. You can tweak it out. It's inexpensive. You can put it on almost any chassis that's made for it. And it's just a utility gun. Mine is a tack driver, really, really accurate. The only thing with that is I tend to have trouble with hollow points feeding. It just wants to catch on the little lip. And so definitely got to watch out for that. I've got everything with me because I'm getting ready to go out shooting. I will recommend the Aguila ammo. they have and really any of their ammo I like, but especially the round nose stuff for anything that you have feeding issues on. But this stuff is cheap, and it's high quality ammo for being so cheap. I mean, before the pandemic, I would get this box for like $2.50 for 50 rounds. You can't hardly beat that. Obviously, it's up from that now, but it's still reasonably priced, high quality. Recommending my Aguila ammo. So good question there, Black Ops. Yeah, he had another question. Pete, do you remember what it was?
I don't. I will say this too. I was watching a Dateline this last weekend, and I don't think I finished this one, but this gal got shot in her garage 7 times, and they found 11 casings and couldn't find the other, bullets anywhere. So, but her car was missing, so maybe they were shot in the car. I don't know. I haven't seen the whole episode, and they're showing clips of the casings, and I'm like, that's a 22. Someone shot her with. No wonder it took 7 shots. It was the one in her neck that finally did it. Oh, man. She got 3 in her chest, and then she turns to run, 3 in the back. I'm like, dude, it's a freaking 22. Like you saw in that video, you got to do the headshot if you're doing the 22.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Otherwise, you just kind of pissing people off.
Yep. The thing is, fortunately, I guess, many of the miscreants that want to cause harm are not well versed in firearm usage. And so fortunately, many of them suck. That's because, as we know, when it comes to using 22 for self-defense, first of all, we wouldn't be using it in the first place. But secondly, if we did, we're going to make sure that shot placement is right there at the eye sockets.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's if you guys haven't watched that Garand Thumb video, it is so worth watching. The 22, because he doesn't just cover 22, but it's really interesting to see what the 22 does. And then once you see what of course the 9mm does, is like, yeah, I'm carrying 9mm all the time. He doesn't even test the 45. We all know that would be just a cannon. But man, the tech on those 9mm has come so far and do so much good with that. So for whatever reason, I can't load all of the old comments right now. Facebook really is hating us today. But I think Black Ops might have had a question related to ATF classification of gun parts, if I'm recalling right. And because we are running into this issue of they are talking about classifying a whole lot more gun parts effectively as guns. And that is a big issue, because if that comes through and everything's going to be tracked, holy cow. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Pete. I got a couple of thoughts.
Well, I didn't read it's right now, it's in the 90-day comment section, right, from the public, as if they give a rip what the public has to say, right? I mean, they've already made up their minds on what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it was something like, it could take less than 8 hours to make this firearm. If you're looking at like you want it to take more than 8 hours, then basically you're saying, here's a block of metal.
Yeah.
Go make a firearm. Yeah. And even then, with today's CNC machines, it'd probably only take 2 hours for a CNC machine just to cut out a lower for an AR. So what are you going to track? Are you going to track literally blocks of metal now and make us, have a background check before we buy a block of metal? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, because then you start thinking about, okay, I'm putting a gun in a gun. Like once all of the pieces are labeled, there's so much complexity, so much. And then, the whole thing of at some point, anything that could be used. And I always like to remind everybody, you realize I can build a shotgun out of some pipes at Home Depot. For crying out loud, are we going to consider mouse traps a gun? Because I can use that as a firing pin, it's ridiculous. Like once they've gone down this road, there's a whole lot of things that can be considered a gun, including just a block of metal. And so I don't know that we have a solution for you there, Black Ops, but I would say this is a big problem for freedom in general. And I would say it would go even beyond freedom related to guns. Once you start classifying parts of things, well, then if that part's used in something else, if that a part could be adapted to be used for a gun, who knows how far they'll take it. And man, not to mention, think about like all that being serialized, all of that being taxed. So then now we're going to have to be dealing with the financial end of that, and they're going to hire more ATF agents. The whole thing becomes a mess. And yeah, so no real thoughts on that other than, yeah, it sucks. Like,
yeah, well, you guys do realize that the menthol ban is going to be done by the ATF, right? It is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So the guys who have all the guns are going to be enforcing the menthol ban.
Yeah. It is it's shady, guys. And that is absolutely targeting urban communities. I'm convinced of it. They even mention, because they're trying to say they're doing a good thing, like, we really need to help Black communities not, smoke unhealthy things. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're going to target the freedom of a people group and say it's for their good? Like, that makes me mad, dude. Like, it's racism as far as I'm concerned, but it's evil no matter what. Yeah. And yeah, the ATF's going to be showing up over the Newports.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it, and like I said before, I believe that smoking is pretty bad because of the complications. It's actually not the smoke itself. It's all the complications that you get, the emphysema and everything else that comes because you spent a life smoking. My wife's father died from complications from being a smoker all of his life. I mean, it's bad. But I also believe in freedom. You got the freedom to make bad choices. We have no problem at all with Americans overeating and eating really bad food and becoming massively obese. But we don't want you to smoke because that's going to kill you. Well, the obesity is killing us left and right because of all the problems that has, diabetes, etc., heart disease, all of it. But we don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. It's insane. It's great. Well, and it just gets me mad. Gets me thinking about all the other things, all the other laws that they make supposedly for our good. And I did just see Cowboy's over here, and he says, he's like, meanwhile, I'm over here with cowboy boots and a Black and Mild. So, I think that's awesome. So good stuff, man. Well, we need to talk a little bit. Hold on, because I got a meeting that thinks he's popping in early, and I got to tell him not to come in yet. Otherwise, he's going to mess up our recording. Hold on. So I think we should talk about this whole issue with Bill Gates and Epstein really quick. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but
no, we don't have a whole lot of information either. But here's the headline on The Guardian. Of course, now that article doesn't want to pull up. Maybe Bill Gates is trying to have it scrubbed from the internet. Huh? Geez, maybe. the whole article's not coming up now.
Hold on, where was I? I was on MSN.
No, that's funny.
Which is ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
MSN, essentially, Melinda Gates is saying that she's that I guess some of the timing on filing for divorce, and that it has some relationship to time that Bill Gates spent with Epstein.
That's when it all started for her.
Sources told the outlet that Bill's friendship with Epstein, who had already pleaded guilty to soliciting an underage girl in 2008, when the first two connected in 2001, still haunts, quote unquote, Melinda Gates. So that is, which, you know what? That's what I was saying way back. That, man, it's one thing when you don't know what somebody is doing and you're just like, oh man, I had no idea that this guy was this creepy person. It's another thing when, like, Epstein pled guilty. Like, he was guilty. Now, he wasn't serving his time. It's a whole mess how he got away with not actually even fulfilling his probation, and nobody seemed to be checking on it, which is shady on top of shady. But because I think about, like, the guys who get caught with weed, man, their PO is on top of them all day long. They miss the slightest little mess up and they're thrown back in jail. But, like, a guy who actually raped children, that guy, during his parole, never even had to check in. That makes me mad. Anyway, I was saying all that to say, Bill Gates didn't actually even pursue a friendship with him until after that. It's like right around 2008, after that clown had already pled guilty. So I'm like, that just, you know what you're getting into then. And so that's where I'm like, his friends from before, where maybe they knew, maybe they didn't, I can at least say, maybe you didn't know. But after that, where you're like, you're going to hang out with this guy, you're going to facilitate his business, you're going to do business with him. That just makes me mad. So I'm glad to hear she's mentioning that. I'm surprised that MSN is actually reporting.
I know, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it's the other thing too that I thought was funny is the meme. I don't know if you saw it, but the Queen, she's single for the first time, and now all of a sudden Bill Gates is getting a divorce. Wait a second. maybe he's reevaluating his options. Who knows?
Oh dear. You never know what people like that will do to get power. So, and nothing seems too crazy for me these days. Everything is so bonkers. None of that would surprise me. Oh.
Yeah, all I know is according to TMZ, the whole family they rented out some island for like $158,000 a day or something like that, so they could, kind of like when the whole news broke of the divorce, they could be away from the public and not have to deal with it all. Bill wasn't invited. The whole family did not want Bill to go. It was like, so all of the rest of the family went, the kids, her, but not Bill. He's out. Man. So whatever the real motivation is, there's stuff going down in that family for sure. And apparently he transferred $2 billion over to her the day that it broke. Man. As like part of, the divorce proceedings, I guess, whatever they've decided on. Man. So
no, man. What a
you see that meme too, where the guy reaches out to her on Facebook and is like, he didn't deserve you. You're too good for him. By the way, what are you doing right now?
Hey, maybe I just found out you got like $2 billion. Like, I could help you out.
Minimum, right? Because, dude, they had no prenup, right? I mean, so she gets access to all of that.
Man, it could be. Think about how this could play out for the favor of people's freedom. Like, he's throwing around his financial weight to facilitate tyranny. And so, man, knock down his dollar count would help us out all a lot. Which speaking of which, because his big thing is vaccines. Have you heard we've mentioned his TED Talk a few years ago where he mentions like lowering population through vaccines, which I'm like, that should make all of us say, wait, what? So I'm taking the kids to the zoo Saturday. I'm walking into the zoo. It's outside. And at the zoo, you don't have to wear a mask unless you're going in a building. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I'm not even in the zoo yet, man. I'm walking from the parking lot. And I kid you not, there is a group of FEMA agents. And I'm talking, how you watch like when the feds are, the FBI is raiding something on TV and they have those like windbreaker jackets that say FBI in real big letters that they wear over the regular clothes. So they're easy to identify. Something to keep in mind for later, boys and girls. Anyway, the FEMA guys were wearing those same kind of jackets with FEMA written on the side. And they're accosting people, asking them like, hey, have you been vaccinated yet? Have you been vaccinated yet? And I'm like, I just looked at the dude and I'm like, I don't talk about my medical history. And I'm thinking like, whatever happened to HIPAA, man? Like,
right.
When has that ever been okay for anybody, let alone a federal agent, to ask people about their medical history? So my wife, who is just having none of this, she's just so pissed about all of this. Her plan is she's like, okay, next time I get asked that, I'm going to be like, are you HIV positive? Do you have syphilis? Like, just start asking really embarrassing, like, what kind of STDs do you have? Do you have genital warts? Just to mess with them. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you, honey. So anyway.
What did you say to him? Did you just say, I don't discuss my medical history? Or?
Yeah, I just said that and walked away. Like, it was weird. Like, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, FEMA implies that there is a natural disaster, right? They get called in when like, it's hit the fan and, we can't get food in. So I'm like, why the heck is FEMA at the zoo asking people about vaccinations? Made me mad. So
we went to Knott's Berry Farm because it finally opened last week. And so I'm walking around with the mask under my nose because I like to breathe,
Same here, man. Yeah.
And there's always one employee who's like she goes, "Sir, can you put the mask over your nose?" And I go, like that, like literally just did the motion. And she goes, "Sir," and I go, "I'm just gonna walk a few more feet away from you, lady." I'm like, what the heck?
Well, I posted a while back, and I can't believe it took me this long. But there's the librarian at our local library hassled, like she was going around hassling everybody. She's walking like to little kids and be like, put your mask up. And she's like, I'm kind of a mask Nazi. And I'm like, and I remember thinking, like, if you have to refer to yourself as a Nazi in this scenario, you're the bad guy. Now, of course, I didn't think about that until like 3 weeks later when I'm like, dang it, I wish I could have said that. But she was just going around for the sole purpose of telling everybody to pull their masks up. And I'm like, what's wrong with you people?
I don't understand the compliance that everyone has given to this.
I know.
And I was talking with, I got to be careful how I tell this story. I was talking with people. Let's just leave it at people. I was talking with people yesterday.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how their church, they're so proud of their church because their church has had a kids program and they've kept it going via Zoom this whole time. I'm like, Zoom? Still? Like, you guys are still doing Zoom? Yeah. In fact, this week we're doing a drive-through award ceremony where everyone gets to stay in their car. And I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
We would not let our kids do that at all.
Yeah.
They got to do Zoom for school, which is already a ripoff. Yeah. I'm not making them do that for church too. This is ridiculous.
Man. Yeah. I'm taking the stance. I'm like, it's just not church. Like, you can do some good stuff. I mean, I'll do Bible studies. We can teach people. Like, you can do some helpful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not church. Like, the expectation is you gather, you break bread.
But not only that, but kids need to be around other kids.
Yeah. Like,
it's healthy for them to be around other kids. It's not healthy for them to be isolated.
Yeah. Well, and we're seeing the fallout from that, man. I've got friends whose relative kids, like not their own kids, are severe depression. Man, just talked about, my wife's a licensed counselor. This, like, she doesn't tell details, but she's just like, man, listen, people are a wreck right now. And she's like, it's not the virus, it's all of the fear mongering and the isolation. And it's making people crazy, man.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Last week's episode of the Church Planner podcast was really good. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you listen to it. We interviewed a dude who wrote a book. I want to say it's Hope Always is the name of it. Mm-hmm. He's an ER doctor and a minister, and it's all about suicide. I mean, that's what the whole book's about. It's about the stats on it, everything. And so, you know, Peyton goes, well, you know, we know that that suicides are up, you know, during the pandemic and everything. You know, how is, you know, I can't remember what his question was, but the guy goes, actually, suicides are down during the pandemic. He goes, however, overdoses are way up, skyrocketed up. And then he also contrasted, he goes, back in the 1930s, they would have counted overdoses as suicides. And now we've just broken it all out. And we said, well, we got these deaths over here and these ones over here, we're going to call suicides. But it used to be overdoses were always considered suicides. But just the whole fact that so many people are turning to drugs and overdosing on it because of what's going on in their lives because of what the government has done to them.
Man, what a mess.
Yeah.
Oh man, it breaks my heart, dude.
Yep.
I'm really heartbroken for these kids growing up in it. I'm even thinking about, like, for myself, my family and I, we don't live in the fear. We don't watch the news all the time. We don't freak out. But there are days where I'm like, man, you know, I'm going to get out and do this or that. And it's like, man, I can't go anywhere without the oppression just in our face. You can't go to regular restaurant. The restaurants on the way of the second apocalyptic issue of, like, because of the unemployment going to everybody, and, you know, places can't get workers to come back to work.
Yep.
So, like, they're shutting down, like, Taco Bell can't open. And I'm like, when I can't get my Baja Blast, we got problems. So it's a weird time, man. And so I don't want to isolate my kids and all be here, but this is the only place where we lack fear. Of course, when we get together with the church, our church gets together and we're cool, and that's good. But I'm starting to think, like, maybe I need to plan more times for the church to get together because, man, my kids can't do much else.
What's funny is one of the guys, so our church shut down the kids program we go to a small offshoot of a big church. They call themselves a church plant, but it's not really a church plant. It's just like a church transplant is what I'd call it. So when we wanted our kids to go to, a children's church service, we had to take them to the big church, which is great, right? Because they got lots of kids and that's good for them. So they closed that down with the pandemic. And then finally, one of the guys who leads that, who goes to our church, we know him, he's a good guy, great guy. He gets to preach every once in a while. I mean, I think that's kind of what they kind of see his future as. Now he's an elder at the church. He's like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and start kids' church at our house since the church won't have it. And he started doing it at their house, and it was fantastic.
That's awesome.
I mean, 2 hours a week, and all these kids were showing up, and and it's like, and then finally, I think the church kind of got the picture. Hey, the parents don't care that the kids are hanging out with other kids without masks on.
Yeah.
So then the church is like, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and start church again. And it's like, but that's what you guys should have been doing to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had to essentially be talked into it by the people, which is
they had to see it actually going on, because the people going, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and do it without you. We don't need you. Don't need your building.
Not to be mean about it, but I'm like, that's not faithful elders. Faithful elder would say, listen, I know it's a little bit scary, but the family needs to be together. And so we're going to have church. And if you can be here, get here. If you're super high at risk, we'll talk about that. But like they that's the tail wagging the dog, man. That's not.
Well, what's funny is he was the only guy at their meeting where they're I guess I don't know how they do it. They must discuss, like, this is for our next series, this is what it's going to be. And they decided to go through Daniel. Daniel, who's ordered not to pray to anyone but the king
for 30 days. 30 days.
For 30 days. And, everyone could have been, well, just close your blinds, close the curtains and go ahead and pray. But no, Daniel's like, no, I'm praying to God. And he's like, you do realize that we're all following what the state's telling us to do. And we're trying to say, look at Daniel, who said, I don't care what the state's telling me what to do. I'm going to do what's right. Yeah. He was the only one who made him look at that.
I'm glad he did. Cause I already talked about it. I just preached on this, but it's like, do none of you look at the faithful across the millennia of believers who would defy tyrants? Anyway, that's a whole other thing. And of course, Daniel was so respectful and he still disobeyed, rightly so. So two thoughts on that. One, if you guys ever get the chance to check out the Reformed Sage, the Reformed Sage has this t-shirt and it just says, obey God, defy tyrants, Acts 5:29. And it is the gnarliest picture of a dagger through the skull of a king. And it is freaking cool. Highly recommend it. Fits right along with our topic there. Of course, hypothetically in Minecraft, but
well, you could always say defy tyrants. And if someone gets all offended by that, then you're admitting you're a tyrant, right?
Yeah.
Because I said defy tyrants. I didn't say defy you.
Well played. Excellent. So good stuff, man. I know we've hit a lot of small topics today.
Yeah.
So that was fun. I will give two quick things as we're finishing out here. If you have not watched the documentary Thomas Sowell, Common Sense in a Senseless World, I'm going to highly recommend it. It's on Amazon Prime. Really great. Obviously does not directly deal with guns, but deals with the topic of freedom in general. Great stuff. And if you're not reading Thomas Sowell, you need to be reading some Thomas Sowell. Anything else, Pete, before we give your arms the nod?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, hey, I do want to let everybody know, Lake Erie Arms, learms.net. We actually just added yet another class. We have an advanced open-handed self-defense class, in addition to all of our gun training classes, advanced conceal carry stuff, not to mention all the cool stuff on there. And we're looking at some other exciting things that are coming down the pike. Big news that we've been talking about for years that is finally starting to come together. So those of you guys who are following Lake Erie Arms, you know what I'm talking about. You're allowed to start getting excited now. So anyway, more on that later, but check out learms.net.
All right, guys, we'll be back next week with another episode. Of course, we won't be on our Facebook page because, COVID.
Yeah. COVID. Yeah.
COVID's the excuse for everything.
Spreading the virus of freedom. All right, everybody. Take care.
All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.